Michaela Chester here for NCAA Digital. I am joined by Danielle Lawrie today from Washington Softball, a Washington legend. We're going to go through some of your top Women's College World Series moments. Thanks so much for joining me, Danielle. I'm going to have to pull up your 2007 game. It was in the Women's College World Series, and you throw a no-hitter. As you pull it up, this was the first no-hitter since 2003. Let me know what you remember from this game. Just take me through it as you're watching it back.
Number one, I look like a baby. It's so crazy to think 2007, how long ago that was. Wow. And what a different team. I think through that moment, that was really my first Women's College World Series experience. So little do people know how nervous I was, because this was the first game of the tournament. When you've never been to the World Series, I think you have no clue what you're getting yourself into, right? And it doesn't matter if you've been there before or if you're coming back. The first game out of the gates is almost the most important one.
Right.
So, I mean, ignorance is bliss in that moment, but I think for me, I was just like, wow, I'm actually here. Like, this is such a surreal, crazy experience, and I'm the one that's in the circle. It's crazy.
As I was watching it back, one of the biggest things I noticed is you almost always were ahead in the count. It was always an 0-2 pitch count. How did that help you in this no-hitter situation?
You know, I think sometimes the beauty of the World Series is you're not facing teams that you're used to facing, right? Like Pac-12 is so difficult, Pac-10 back in the day, as well as the SEC. So when you square off against those two teams right out of the gate, you get a different outcome. In this type of situation, us playing DePaul, I hadn't played them all year. So I think for me, it was about understanding, like, they have no idea what I bring to the table and vice versa. So the beauty of that is you don't really need to hold anything back. I have the ability to just go right at them, not worry about them sitting on a changeup, because they probably don't know that's my best pitch. And back in the day, there wasn't as much information out as there is now on players. So at that point, my game plan was to go out with everything I had, and you seriously need to win game one to advance as far as you can in this tournament.
I have to ask, did you know that you were in the midst of pulling off a no-hitter? I mean, it must have been on your mind.
I mean, I knew about it, but people seem to think that, like, those accolades and those types of things are, like, really big deals. But as a player, like, when you're in those moments, like, that is the last thing you're thinking about, right? You're so, like, about the team and, like, number one, we got to win this game. So my job is to go out into the circle. I need to figure out a way to get ahead. And I think sometimes when you start to think about, oh, maybe I'm throwing a no-hitter, or, oh, man, I'm not getting ahead, that's when you get rattled and stuff starts to spiral. So I was young and ignorant to it, and it was just going out and finding a way to keep getting ahead. And I was lucky enough. I mean, they still scored a run. I was on the phone with Dina Tyson the other day, and we're still talking about how she missed the throw to first base. I was like, am I the only pitcher that threw a no-hitter where they scored, Dina? You should have caught that. We were just going back and forth.
That's hysterical. Yeah, no-hitter with a run scored. Okay, I'm going to have you move on to 2009.
Okay.
This is your championship year. You're the National Player of the Year this season. Take me through this. You're playing Georgia. This is not the championship yet, but you have a grand slam. It's literally in the first inning, and you hit it out of the park. Take me through that at bat.
Dude, Georgia was our team's Achilles heel. Like, they were so tough. Right from when we played them in the beginning at the Alabama tournament in preseason, to squaring off game one of the Women's College World Series, to then having to play them again game one on Sunday and losing. That was a dagger. We lost 9-8 in that heat. And then having to come back, I think the biggest key for our team in that moment was truly remembering that 15-inning game that we played at UMass and how difficult that was. I think when you're able to really remember the hard stuff, it allows for a moment like that where it's like, sheesh, we've been playing all day, like our backs are up against the wall. It allowed for me personally in that moment to just endure and be like, I've gone through too much as an Olympic athlete in 08, to the struggles of all of that, to just this whole entire year, to give up in this moment because it's too hard. And that's what happened for me in 2007 when we played Arizona twice Sunday. So I think for me, it was using the experience piece, and we were very fortunate to have a team that had a lot of experience in that moment for sure.
What was the feeling hitting that grand slam in the Women's College World Series and then finishing it out and knowing you're going to the title game?
I was as stoic as ever. That's the one thing that I noticed. Some people will hit a grand slam and they're all just like fist pumping and running. And I think for me in that moment, I knew, number one, yeah, it's legit. We have 4 runs up on the board, but Georgia's so good. You cannot score enough runs. So for me, it was like, that's the first thing I say to my team. Like, guys, this game's not over yet. Yes, like, I'm fortunate I could go hit a grand slam, and now I get to go back out in the circle and help my cause. But I think in that moment, I was so very much foot on the gas pedal as hard as we can go until the very last out, because that's the type of team that Georgia is. And they were always the tough ones for us.
Now you're in the title game. You're facing Florida. I'm going to let you pull up the footage for this one. You literally led Washington all season long to this moment. You were leading, you were doing amazing all year, and now you're in the Women's College World Series in this final moment to win your first title. What was going through your head, and what do you remember from this game?
I remember the night before when we had our team meeting and we're all sitting there, and I honestly had to pinch myself, because I was like, a young Canadian girl from small town, like not really understanding the magnitude of what this is in this moment. I sat back and I was like, ladies, we have it. Like, this is insane. We have a chance. Like, we set this goal at the beginning of the year. And as a squad, like, we're in this position to go fight for a national championship. It was the most surreal moment ever. And I was nervous. I could barely sleep that night. I was going through like each hitter in my brain throughout the night of like how I'm going to approach them. And I think the beauty of the moment is when we got into game 1, at the end of the day, it's still softball, right? It's 43 feet. You can't try to make it bigger than it is. And in that moment, that's what I tried to stick to. I think as athletes, when you try to make something so much bigger than it is or try too hard, that's when stuff doesn't work. But I had the nerves flowing. I had the good juices. I had the adrenaline, my family there. One of the best moments by far of my life.
Bottom of the first inning, you're down 2-0, and you hit an RBI single. Take me through that at bat.
Yeah, that was such a different game. Florida came out with such a different approach. And it's funny because I was watching the game this morning, and I just hear John Kruk on the call, just on me about the umpires' calls and how I have attitude. And I'm like, Kruk, you're a baseball guy. That is exactly what MLB pitchers do. And you're sitting here calling me out on ESPN. But, I was lucky that I could help the cause. I think if I didn't hit, I might have got more rattled as a pitcher. I felt like hitting didn't feel like as much pressure to me. Pitching, let's be real, I was the only one that threw a lot of the time. And at times there's a lot of pressure in those moments. So for me, it was like when I stepped into the batter's box, I got to relax and I got to say, like, I don't got to think. I just get to step in. I get to focus on what my approach is, and I just get to try to execute. And number one, when you go to Ashley Charters and Kimmy Pullman hitting ahead of you and Jen Salling, they were pretty much automatics getting on. And in that moment, it was just trying to figure out a way to scrape something through on Stacey Nelson, who threw hard down in the zone, and found a way to get it past Asia Bakulba, and we scored the run. And then it's just like, you can take a breath, right? You're like, all right, hey, yeah, they're ahead 2-0, but we put another run on the board. Especially right out of the gate, because you're deflated a bit when you come out game 2 and they put 2 runs on you in the first inning.
Yeah, you mentioned it. You pitched all 6 games in the Women's College World Series. The Gators coach at the end of the game, he said it seemed like every time he was in a situation where they had runners on base, you just always seemed to rev it up to another level and get yourself out of the hole. How did you do that?
I think like adrenaline plays such a piece when you get into those moments. And, it's so funny because I really enjoyed, I guess, during this quarantine when they came up with The Last Dance with Michael Jordan. And you heard him really talk about, like, sometimes he would make stuff up in his head to create this attitude of like a scenario. So for me in those moments, it would be like, ooh, you got a runner on. Now it's like really time for me to amp it up and like show you who's boss. And there's obviously more pressure in those situations. So I think when you're able to truly just let the pressure in and not fear it and just be like, all right, let's go. Runners on. It's not like it's any different, but you get a little extra pep in your step. You can throw it a little bit harder. And the swagger comes out sometimes in a little bit of a different way. And I put myself in so many situations that World Series, especially in that Florida game. Watching it back, even watching with my husband, we're sitting and he's like, I can't believe like how many times they had runners on and how do you deal with it? And I was like, yeah, you probably couldn't pay me to go back and do that exact same thing.
In your post-game interview, you said I like to keep them on their toes.
Oh, and that's a lie. I don't want to do that, but sometimes that just seemed to be the nature of the beast for me. But it is what it is.
I know you were really fond of your changeup. It was your favorite pitch. As you're watching back these clips, what do you think of what you were throwing?
I think once I figured out the umpire zone to figure out what I was able to get ahead with, I could toy around and play with some stuff a little bit. And I think at that point, I was fortunate enough to be able to throw the ball pretty hard, and that helps. And then when you have that difference in change in speeds, at the end of the day, it was location, location, location for me. And as a pitcher, when you figure out the umpire zone right away, a night and day difference from the night before. Sometimes it can take a couple innings to figure out, like, okay, I'm not getting this inside part of the plate to the righties that I was yesterday, or the curveball. So it's like trying to figure out adjust as quickly as you can, because Florida's offense was so good and potent that, like, I can't get away with it for too many innings without being able to find a way to figure out the umpire zone. So for me, it was understanding changeup's always there. I can always change up speeds, but I think I had to establish that ball up in the zone more. And just really focus on like that east-west curve screw, and really kind of use that. Because after a while, teams know you throw a good changeup, right? So it's like really picking the right moment, not throwing it too much, and not fearing anything. You're not scared to throw it in. You're not scared to throw it out. Yeah, I found a way to continue to keep doing what I was doing, I guess.
Yeah, it worked. Okay, I'm going to have you pull up the very final out of the national championship.
Okay.
You're up by 1, 3-2 in the top of the 7th inning national championship game. There's 2 runners on base and 2 outs.
Yeah.
And Allie Gardner steps up into the batter's box, who I might add just hit a walk-off grand slam a game previous to get to this game. This is the ultimate matchup. What was going through your head in this moment?
So many things. It was definitely a very emotional time. And I think what I really remember the most was like taking control of that situation. I remember walking Kelsey Bruder intentionally because she had the best ABs on me of the day. And for me, it was about, okay, I was super lucky with Franny that she didn't hit that ball out, who's now a good friend of mine. So we were even talking about that a couple weeks ago. I was like, that could have been such a different game if that ball was 3 inches higher. You know what I mean? So it was like, I was blessed in that situation. The softball gods were on my side, and they said, nope, it's staying in the park. And I think understanding person to person, Megan Bush, you know, was swinging that pitches way up in the zone. She had the adrenaline running. We struck her out easy with that. And then it's not like in the back of my mind, I was like, okay, Allie Gardner just hit a walk-off bomb the other day. I really, in that moment, felt on top of the world. I was like, there is 1 out left to seal the deal on Washington's first national championship ever. There is no way in hell that this chick is getting a hit off me. It was mind over matter, foot on the gas all the way. And when it finally happened, it was, you know, it truly was. Like, aside from the birth of my 2 daughters, that was the highlight of my life, with everything, having, you know, my teammates there, obviously winning a championship for HT. It was, you know, I was her first recruit ever at the program. So I think for me, it was just so amazing having the best people in the world all there. My family, my grandma, my parents, my brother was playing MLB, but I know he was watching. And it's a super special moment when everyone in your inner circle is all there and they're watching you do your thing and they fully support you. And it definitely can get you emotional thinking about that. And I truly remember the Olympic grind of doing that and going through that hard time, but then having Jen Salling, a teammate there, winning a national championship together after going through that hard stuff. It was, I wouldn't change a thing. I wouldn't change a thing, or how hard that truly was, because it is the best moment, one of the best moments of my life for sure.
They show your dad in the stands. He looks obviously emotional. What was that relationship like, and that moment you got to share with him?
Yeah, they've both been such a rock for me. You know, my mom is just that very sweet and caring and like able to just, you know, calm the nerves a little bit. And my dad is a pusher. He sees and saw something so great in my brother and I. And he was the first one every morning saying, hey, this is the plan. We're going to train. We're going to do this. And, you know, I didn't always like it, but I'm not the same person that I am today, nor was I the same person in that national championship if it wasn't for the extra push for him. So it was emotional. It's crazy because I'll almost cry more now when I watch and I see him in the stands because I do have kids. So I'm like, I can't imagine that moment of, you know, your daughter in that and you have no control of the situation, but you're just hoping for the best. And I remember walking outside of the stadium up into the stands and giving him a big hug and just telling him this was the best moment of my life. And he had tears in his eyes. And it was just, I was so proud that, that I could do that for them. You know, it's like a payback for everything that they've invested, to travel ball, to driving you here and there. And it's the biggest moment for softball aside from the Olympic Games, you know, and to be able to go to the Olympics in 2008 and have my family and my tribe there supporting me, and then continuing that on into the national championship year, they're there for me forever. And my dad is, you know, a crazy guy at times, but he loves hard, and I'm by far nowhere near the same person I am today without what he and my mom did for both my brother and I.
Yeah, a truly incredible moment. Thank you so much, Danielle, for joining me and sharing that story with us.
For sure. Thank you.